Hello and welcome to today's content, which will focus on Robb and his EX since it has been released and it was requested in the comments. I'll be analyzing his abilities and will give him a rating out of 10 based on his unit and his kit. So without further ado, let's begin. As always, we go talk about the main job takeaways, which is Samurai for Robb. As a base unit, he gets Hien, Kongo, and then Majestic Prestige, which is his limit break. He does have other abilities, but I don't think they warrant enough to be on his takeaway, so I didn't put them here. At EX though, with his upgrades, he does get the Zansetsu Kongo, which breaks the physical barriers, which is very nice to have. And then he gets Vortex Render as his EX ability, which is a huge AoE as you can see, and it has a higher chance of critical chance, so that's pretty nice to have. Very nice AoE and has higher crit chance, so it's basically just gonna be a good amount of damage. So we move on to the sub job takeaways. For his EX upgrades, the thing you should be looking at is going to be his Honed Devotion. His Honed Devotion, when it has the EX upgrade, gives him the defense penetration by 40%. It's just very, very nice to have because he lacks defense penetration. This helps him significantly in that regard. For his Soldier sub-job, he gets Hazard Spin and Grim Reaper. They're both pretty good to use, however, because there's an EX buff that significantly opens up Robb's DPS, it's kind of hard to recommend any of the other sub-jobs, so I would recommend this Samurai sub-job. But for his Lancer though, if you want to expand on your attack types, then Lancer has at least Burst, Slash, Shadow Stick, and Earthen Glory that all can deal significant damage and have either decent range or AoE. Just in general though, because he has an EX upgrade on his main sub job as Samurai, it's a bit hard to recommend the other sub jobs in this regard. So we move on to the resistances and passives. Since I didn't actually do a review of Robb yet, we'll just go over everything as normal regardless of his EX or not. So for his resistances, we have 0% for magic and pierce, which is nice to have. It's better than negative. He has 15% to missile and slash, which is good, and then 25 to strike. While this is good for the strike, there are not as many strike damage type units out currently, outside of Ziza or Auron. There are not as many hard hitters that are EX yet. So for now, the 25% it seems really good, but it's not used as often. For the statuses, he has a 50% to paralyze and blind, which are two not bad resistances, and then he has a negative 5% to charm, which is not too bad. I mean, not many use charm and auto, but yeah. For his master ability though, he gets crit rate 10% for himself and evasion rate 5% for himself. What this is good about is that this opens up a little bit more for his evasion possibilities, as well as the crit rate being good because it allows him to crit more, and if you crit you get a little bit more damage. For his passives, the recommended ones I would say is going to be Blade Soul and Self-Sacrifice. Blade Soul not only opens up his evasion utility even more, but he also gains more damage there, and Self-Sacrifice is his main attack steroid for his passive, which is going to be kind of needed considering that if he wants to compete in terms of DPS to the other top units for DPS, which as of the video making would be Auron, Gilgamesh, and Tidus, he will need Self-Sacrifice on. For the niche and flex stuff, it's going to be Pierce Mastery because it only helps his Lancer subjob, and Deadly Mastery, which increases his crit rate, but because Robb has nothing, absolutely nothing for crit damage, it feels kind of like a waste, or it feels kind of bad to get only crit rate instead of increasing his attack in general. For his reaction abilities, he has Third Eye, which is what I would recommend if you're going an evasion build. He has Counter Thrust and Counter Slash, which are unfortunately both one single tiles, and they're not as good as Auron's Counter, which is 50% chance of proccing, but these are both at 30% of proccing. They're not bad, but he doesn't have any crazy good reaction abilities outside of those three. So we move on to Robb's rating out of 10, and hear me out on this. Before we go through his unit as itself, we will go with his TMR first, because it's actually a higher rating in my opinion. So in terms of TMR chase rating, I gave it a 9 out of 10. The reason why is that his armor, the glinting armor, is at 482 HP, which is good for an armor. It's not bad. 10 defense, which is kind of standard for most of the TMR armors. It's usually 10 defense or 10 spirit or a mixture. but mostly it's going to be for the Keen Blade active. The Keen Blade active not only increases your slash attack, but it also gives you a huge CT boost for all your allies and a small AoE. This is very, very useful in terms of like making cheese strats for like early turn advantage. It's very good for manual battle or class match or like live PvP. It's extremely good there too. Auto, like outside like cheese strats or like trying to just get faster turn order, it's not too bad, but it has definitely significant uses, mostly in manual PvP. Anyways, moving on, we go on to Robb's unit as a whole. If this was basically, I didn't put his rating pre-EX because I think he's literally not a unit his pre-EX, but with his EX and what we have like foreseeable to come in terms of the Japanese meta and what units we'll be getting or are out right now, I really do see him only at a max of like 7.5 out of 10, and I'll explain why. So outside of his limit break and his vortex render ability, he has very, very short range abilities and he has no long reach. Even if he does have long range, his hardest hitting ability is gonna be Kongu in general, or his LB. So he has to be up in their face for the enemy. Due to the passive setup, as I said as well, if he wants to deal a significant amount of damage, he has to use self-sacrifice, which lowers all his resistances. So that is something to consider. He can't really take too much damage. His EX lets him like at least gain a lot more HP compared to his pre-EX. Pre-EX, he can die to it like a fart. Literally, his HP just is not high enough there. He has very, very high evasion with the correct setup. Unfortunately, this locks him into using an evasion armor, which since he is locked to armors and not cloth, he has to use a ribbon or mithril armor. Ribbon obviously is better, but not everyone has ribbon. Since he doesn't have really much survivability outside evasion, he kind of has to go evasion if you want to use him to survive most of the things. If you make him more tanky or like try to survive more general attacks, you're giving up a lot more resources for that to make him decent, basically. He also has no good AP generation abilities, and he has his defense penetration tied to his sub-job ability, which is kind of sad because he has to choose between using bells because he has bad AP generation and high AP costs, or he has to use his Hone Devotion if he wants the defense penetration. So if in a map like right now for the Guild War, which is the Castle Exterior, I believe, where you have like one turn to like buff up and then run up, he has to choose between one of those, and then Hone Devotion does not give him enough AP to like consistently output firepower. So it's really does not feel good to use him in like those circumstances. He also has no slash penetration without his vision card setup, or at least a vision card, so that's something to consider, that you have to use a vision card there for penetration for his slash. He does have a physical barrier break, which is very nice to have, especially on people who rely on it, like such as Tidus. If Tidus has Saintly Wall, at least with the Kotetsu, at least Robb can get rid of it, like just in one go, and deal like a significant amount of damage. Also, as I said earlier, to make Robb actually good and usable, you have to use his personal vision card on him, which takes up a mandatory vision card slot for only himself pretty much. The evasion is nice, but it's only tied to mono light, unfortunately, so that is something to talk about. And his most effective abilities outside of his limit break is going to be the EX version of the Kongu, which is the Zansetsu, and the Vortex Render. And they both have only 2 casts, and they're extremely heavy AP cost. Because his attack stat cannot really rival Tidus's and who is it? Auron? Like in terms of like raw like stats and their modifiers put together, 2 casts of each of those are not going to be enough to kill like full built tanks, kind of like Warrior Light, or in the future we have very soon King Mont. Like those tanks are going to be a huge wall to Robb. Like Robb cannot take them down fast enough, and he will run out of abilities basically. Overall, I gave Robb a 7.5 out of 10, but I feel like he's like an 8 or 8.5 now, but as time goes on, I just don't see his usability getting any better because he has his EX. So for now, I put him as a 7.5 out of 10. So I changed up how I was going to do this last slide for like matchups and stuff, because I feel like they're a little bit too broad. It's not really good, and I actually seen from the comments more people would rather have like just a setup or like an example build. So I decided to just go with this. If you're gonna set up Robb for evasion, I think his best in slots as of right now is gonna be the purple lightning katana because it has 20 slash on it instead of 15 compared to Osafune, and you get agility on it. Ribbon is gonna be almost mandatory because of the evasion. Bells, as we said earlier, he has AP problems. He has to use Bells or Hone Devotion. He has to choose between one of them. He has Tetra as the Esper because Tetra has the highest evasion as of right now with her evasion panels, and then his own personal vision card to make him more usable. For his full-on DPS build, obviously it's going to be the Purple Lightning again, but we have Tidus's necklace. This is specifically for the critical damage, and I guess because magic hits pretty hard, it helps him survive a little bit, but it's mostly for the critical damage. He has critical rate on his master ability, and Vortex Fender has higher crit rate, but he has no crit damage. By increasing his crit damage, at least with the necklace, it helps him use his crit rate pretty much. The Oldoan apron is there just in case if he needs defense penetration and AP generation, because ironically, Oldoa's apron is actually better than Hone Devotion outside of the attack buff. It's because it's 50% defense penetration and gives him a good amount of AP on use and a little bit of AP generation per turn. So it's not bad compared to Hone Devotion. We have Odin here because in the future, Odin does get his 3-star. When Odin gets his 3-star, any slashers in general is going to use Odin, and it's very, very strong at that point. And he has his own personal vision card. And I didn't say earlier, but why I also gave Robb a 7.5 out of 10 is because other evasion units like 2B, they are allowed to use cloth. And when we have the Holy Flan raid for the Santa Claus, which is the highest evasion item in the game, it beats out Ribbon by like far. Robb cannot use it because he is limited to only armor. So basically Ribbon will be his best in slot for evasion, and he will always have less evasion compared to the top units that are going to be coming out, such as like 2B, by like a good amount because of that armor deficiency. And we arrived to the end of the video. As always, if you liked my unit analysis on Robb, please like and subscribe. I think the next unit I will be doing should be Howlet based on requests. However, because we have a lot of units coming out, such as like the Nier collaboration, we have the winter units that should be making a rerun. We might even get summer units, we don't know. It depends. But we also have King Mont coming out and like a whole bunch of units coming out. I don't know how fast I can get the Howlet review done. I will try though if possible. But yeah, until the next video, peace out.